Let's delve more into the G20 and what we can expect. We're joined by SABC News' international editor, Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, thanks for being with us. Conspicuous by their absence, the leaders of China and Russia. So Russia, we know, couldn't attend the BRICS. Tell us some of the reasoning behind Russia and China not attending the G20.
Well, in relation to Russia, we are told that President Vladimir Putin indicated that there's a lot that he has to deal with back home. But as you know, that traveling for him is a problem in relation to security. We saw what happened to Prigozhin recently when he was on the continent and then flying back to Russia. The other issue is that, you know, the hostility between Russia and the United States of America. And I think it was going to be an awkward moment. The issue of China, there are two issues there for me. I think the issue of the border, the problem, that tension between India and China. And secondly, you know that currently in relation to trade, there's a trade war between the United States of America and China. And therefore, you know, perhaps that could be some reasons. And secondly, only a week ago, we saw high-profile leaders converging in South Africa. And the intention was to profile and strengthen the BRICS group. BRICS family, and you know that President Vladimir Putin and President Xi Jinping, they believe in the alternative group that is BRICS, and I think that's where they are now channeling their energies in terms of ensuring that you give BRICS a breather and you give it space and high profile, because this is back to back. But we'll hear, we don't know, perhaps they will indicate to those who are representing these two countries. We know that in relation to Russia, Sergei Lavrov is there representing Russia.
All right, and also there, our president, he has arrived. Any word on who he might talk to behind closed doors? In particular, will he meet Joe Biden? Because we know this issue of Lady R, the claim by the US ambassador to South Africa that weapons were shipped out under the cover of darkness to Russia. And the president saying recently there is absolutely no evidence that has been given of that nature to an independent panel.
It's not clear whether President Ramaphosa will have a bilateral with the US President Joe Biden. But I think if it does happen, this will pave way for them to be able to discuss the current issues. You know, you spoke about Lady R and the outcome thereof, and you know very well that President, when he spoke about this issue, releasing that report, pointed out in terms of the impact of that statement by the US diplomat in South Africa. And you know that the issue of AGOA next month, we'll be hosting the AGOA meeting, and it will be good for President Biden and President Ramaphosa to talk about issues that are related to AGOA. And also ahead of the UNGA, the United Nations General Assembly, where on the margins there's going to be a climate summit hosted by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres for South Africa and the US to speak in one voice. The minister earlier on in that insert pointing out that the US has supported a call for the AU to be a permanent member of the G20. You know that during COVID-19, President Ramaphosa and President Biden did have a discussion, and we saw the United States of America supporting South Africa on that issue of the TRIPS waiver within the WTO. And therefore, I think it is important for these leaders to continue to engage and to pave way for better relations, because both countries must have good relationship with South Africa, either with the US or US with South Africa, because it's not a one-way traffic in terms of trade, but both countries do benefit when the relations are sound and are healthy.
All right, so you spoke about the calls for the AU to become a member of the G20. And Sophie, I mean, at BRICS, we heard this clarion call for change in global institutions. So we had the BRICS Summit, now the G20, then it's going to be the G77, and then, like you say, the United Nations General Assembly. Will we keep hearing those calls for change? Is there a common theme as these world leaders are meeting across proximity in terms of time?
Starting with the AU, majority of members of the G20 are in agreement that AU must be part of the G20. And going forward on other issues as well, when you look at the very same leaders, some of them who are members of the G20 are members of the G77. Going back to BRICS, some of member countries, all of them, if one was to look at the composition of BRICS, they are G20 member countries, and some of them are members of G77 plus China. And therefore, you need this synergy. And I think the Secretary General of the United Nations did set a good tone when he was in the country at the BRICS Summit in relation to transformation of these multilateral institutions, particularly the financial system, your IMF and the World Bank. That was the message. When he came back this week for the Africa Climate Summit, he carried the same message. He did carry the same message when he was in Asia yesterday at that summit. And then he is going to communicate the same message at the G20 tomorrow. And then he will move to the G77, where again he's going to meet the same leaders carrying the same message. And of course, at the UNGA later after G77 next week, the same message. And finally at the COP28 in United Arab Emirates in November, he is going to carry the same message. It cannot be business as usual. The transformation of the financial system on the globe, it has to happen, because you can't have the same principles, same rules, same power located within small group of people within the Security Council. These are some of the issues that the leaders will have to grapple with. And if they can be able to address that, the issue of transformation, I think this problem of the world drifting apart, you'll be able to address that problem.